In tonight's Fox in Focus, here's something most of you probably didn't know. A brand new law right here in Texas makes it legal for a man who was born a man to marry another man. For a man who was born a man to marry another man.
Do I really need to take apart that statement? I mean, I'm sure we can all spot the logical fallacy, but what should we expect from Fox?
For a man who was born a man to marry another man, as long as one of them has had a sex change. Does it sound confusing? Fox 26's Christine Galvan takes a closer look at a legal issue the Attorney General refuses to give an opinion on.
She is the much talked about widow of a Wharton firefighter killed on the job. A woman whose life started with a birth certificate that classified her as a boy and now continues as a woman. Since her birth, Nikki Aragoose has had a sex change operation, and that's all she needed in order to marry a man, according to a year-old amendment to the Texas Family Code.
Texas law now says you can get a marriage license after a sex change.
Fox 26 legal analyst Chris Tritico says a sex change operation doesn't matter to the court.
What the Supreme Court said was you cannot marry a man if you have an XY chromosome.
That's right. In a state governed by traditionally conservative lawmakers, marriages involving a transgendered partner are now legal. But the issue is not clear-cut. In fact, just last week, Texas Attorney General Greg Abbott declined to issue an opinion on a case involving this couple. On an El Paso, Texas newscast, Sabrina Hill, who was born a man,
hermaphrodite Sabrina Hill and her girlfriend T are now married. They tied the knot in San Antonio today. As we told you last week, Sabrina was born an hermaphrodite,
transgendered as a woman, and is now married to another woman, talked about the legal issues concerning her relationship. El Paso County would not marry them, but Bexar County did, and Abbott doesn't have anything to say about it. Daryl Steidley is Aragoose's lead attorney.
Were you waiting to see what Greg Abbott would do or say?
Yes, of course. We were interested to see what the response was going to be.
I don't think he wants to jump into this political hotbed in an election year. That's what I think. And that's a shame, because that's why we elected him, is to interpret and give us these rulings on these laws so we know how to operate and know how to do. I think that he is shirking his responsibility, and it's a shame.
A spokesperson for Abbott's office says there's nothing unusual about his decision to decline giving an opinion when litigation is pending. And right now, the Aragoose case is in the court system. But part of the reason the law is so unclear goes back to 1999, when a Texas court ruled a person can't change their sex for the purpose of marriage.
In other words, you are what you were born. So what we have here is couples who, I started out a man, I now look and appear to be a woman, but under Texas law, I'm still a man, so I will marry this woman. So it appears that we're marrying a same-sex couple.
Transgendered activists fighting for equal rights took advantage of that perception to prove a point. They married as heterosexual couples, even if, much like the El Paso case, they didn't look the part.
You have case law that says one thing, the family code says another thing, the Texas Constitution says we don't recognize same-sex marriages.
Tritico says the legislature trumps the opinion of the court. The Aragoose defense team says that's good news for their case, even though Nikki married before the law was updated.
Littleton just is not even broken anymore by operation of statute.
But is that grandfather involved, the fact that the marriage occurred prior to the change in the law? Does that, in other words...
There you go. Well, that's a good question. That's a very good question. That's why we have put into our pages that you have in our answer that beginning on September the 2nd of 2009, she and Thomas met the 3 conditions of an informal marriage, and these are statutory conditions. One is that they made an agreement to be married. Okay, any couple that is in love, as they were, and that live together as they did, they make that agreement almost every day. that they are going to be married and remain married. And she and Thomas made that agreement all the time. Okay, so that's one. Second is they have to live together in the state of Texas. They clearly did. The third is that they have to continue to hold themselves out as being a married couple. And from September 2nd, 2009, to their bankers, to their neighbors, to their friends, to their church, to their mechanic, to everybody that we've listed in our papers, they held themselves out. So there is no doubt that from September the 2nd, 2009, they had a legal, informal marriage until the day he was taken. So that's it.
Could I ask you one thing? It just occurred to me that
yes, ma'am.
This is probably, for Nikki, this is probably 1 month anniversary of everything going on. I mean...
But as that battle continues, so do the questions. Christine Galvan, Fox 26 News.
Aside from the bad terminology and the about face from the lawyer, this is another case where they left out context. They didn't mention that Nikki's intersex. They didn't mention that the El Paso couple is intersex. The El Paso couple, or the El Paso woman who's intersex, has a male birth certificate. Nikki Aragouz has a female birth certificate. They left that out. They left out the fact that Frank Mann, the opposition attorney for Nikki Aragouz, is currently under investigation for violating Nikki Aragouz's rights and for defamation. And I just want to point out that if the tables were turned and Phyllis was the person who had been suspended for 3 years for ethical violations and then put on probation for another 3 years for ethical violations, and then went on to violate Heather Delgado's rights and then defamed her, boy, don't you know the news would be all over that. But that doesn't fit the narrative. Notice how even though they're just like clinging, oh, I've got to hang on to that narrative, transgender people are deceptive. Even though everything that's come out of Frank Mann's mouth has been proven wrong. You remember him saying, Texas law is clear, Texas law is clear. You know, the case law went to the Supreme Court when it didn't, and it is the law of the land. You remember Frank Mann saying those things? You remember Fox going on and on and on about how her husband didn't know? That was also disproven. No mention of that. But what they will do is show Nikki Aragouz blowing a kiss at the camera, as if, you know, this is really about media.
She's all about publicity, and it's been all about her from the beginning.
Of course, they're going to leave out the context that it's Heather Delgado that went to the press with all of this, and that Nikki didn't say a word for almost 2 weeks while they dragged her name through the mud, and only went on camera when reporters got a hold of her private cell phone number. Oh, you're not going to hear that either. This case affects my life. This case is important. It affects my civil rights, and it will decide my legal standing. Those are things that I care about. Those are things that affect thousands of people. This case is important. And it's important, please, remember to use critical thinking when watching newscasts about Nikki or reading anything in the press. I've not yet found one media outlet who has been either fair or balanced. They all adhere to the age-old narrative. Transgender people are deceptive. And even now that Nikki has been redeemed, all the allegations have been proven false. They're still trying to slide that narrative in.
She's all about publicity.
Christine Galvan, Fox 26 News.
Please be on the lookout for those tricks. Notice them. And please say something about them whenever you spot them. Thanks and peace.